Resident Evil is one of the most influential survival horror franchises ever created. For nearly 3 decades, this series has delivered terrifying monsters, unforgettable characters, intense action, and some of the most iconic moments in gaming history. But not every Resident Evil game is created equal. Today, we're counting down the top 10 Resident Evil games of all time. At number 10, we have Resident Evil 5. Released in 2009, Resident Evil 5 took the action-focused direction of Resident Evil 4 and pushed it even further. For the first time in the main series, co-op gameplay became a major focus, allowing players to experience the campaign with a friend. Playing as Chris Redfield alongside Sheva Alomar created some of the most memorable cooperative moments in gaming. The game features massive set pieces, intense boss fights, and a huge arsenal of weapons. While some fans felt it moved too far away from traditional horror, there's no denying how fun and replayable it remains. It also serves as a major chapter in the story of Albert Wesker, one of the franchise's greatest villains. It may not be the scariest Resident Evil game, but as an action horror experience, it absolutely earns its place in the top 10. At number 9, we have Resident Evil 3, Nemesis. Released in 1999, Resident Evil 3 introduced players to one of the most terrifying enemies in gaming history, Nemesis. Unlike previous monsters, Nemesis relentlessly hunted players throughout the game, creating constant tension and panic. You never felt truly safe because at any moment, he could crash through a wall and start chasing you. Playing as Jill Valentine during the final days of the Raccoon City outbreak gave the story a sense of urgency and desperation. The game also introduced choices that could alter events and encourage multiple playthroughs. Even decades later, Nemesis remains one of the most iconic villains the series has ever produced. At number 8, we have the original Resident Evil 2. Released in 1998, Resident Evil 2 elevated the franchise to a whole new level. Instead of one protagonist, players experienced the nightmare through both Leon S. Kennedy and Claire Redfield. Raccoon City felt alive, dangerous, and completely overrun by the undead. The game's dual scenario system encouraged multiple playthroughs, while its memorable cast and emotional storytelling made a lasting impact. This was also the game that introduced fan favorites like Ada Wong and Sherry Birkin. For many players, Resident Evil 2 wasn't just a sequel, it was the moment Resident Evil became a gaming phenomenon. At number 7, we have Resident Evil Village. Resident Evil Village arrived in 2021 and successfully combined horror, action, and mystery into one unforgettable adventure. Continuing Ethan Winter's story, the game takes players through a terrifying European village filled with monsters, cults, and horrifying secrets. Village constantly changes its gameplay style, keeping the experience fresh from beginning to end. One moment you're surviving psychological horror, and the next you're fighting massive creatures in explosive action sequences. Of course, no discussion about Village is complete without mentioning Lady Dimitrescu, who became an instant gaming icon. Resident Evil Village perfectly balances modern action with classic horror and stands as one of the strongest entries in the franchise. At number 6, we have Resident Evil Remake. Originally released in 2002, Resident Evil Remake is widely considered one of the greatest video game remakes ever made. Capcom didn't simply update the graphics. They completely reimagined the experience. The Spencer Mansion became even more atmospheric, more detailed, and far more terrifying. New enemies like the Crimson Heads forced players to rethink their strategies and increase the tension dramatically. Every hallway, every door, and every shadow contributed to an overwhelming sense of dread. More than 20 years later, Resident Evil Remake remains a masterclass in survival horror design. At number 5, we have Resident Evil 7, Biohazard. After years of increasingly action-heavy games, Resident Evil 7 brought the franchise back to its horror roots. Released in 2017, the game introduced a first-person perspective and delivered one of the scariest experiences in Resident Evil history. The Baker family instantly became legendary horror antagonists. Their unsettling behavior and relentless pursuit kept players on edge throughout the entire adventure. The isolated Louisiana setting created a sense of claustrophobia and vulnerability rarely seen in the series. Resident Evil 7 didn't just revive the franchise, it saved it. Without this game, the modern Resident Evil renaissance might never have happened. At number 4, we have Resident Evil Requiem. Resident Evil Requiem represents the next evolution of the franchise and has already generated enormous excitement among fans. Building on everything Capcom has learned from the recent remakes and modern entries, Requiem aims to combine intense survival horror with cinematic storytelling. The game promises darker themes, stronger psychological horror, and a return to the terrifying atmosphere that made the series famous. What makes Requiem so exciting is the potential it carries. It stands at the crossroads between Resident Evil's legendary past and its future. If it delivers on its ambition, it could become one of the defining entries in the entire franchise. At number 3, we have Resident Evil 4. When Resident Evil 4 launched in 2005, it completely changed the gaming industry. Its revolutionary over-the-shoulder camera system influenced countless games that followed. Playing as Leon Kennedy on a mission to rescue the president's daughter, players faced terrifying villagers, unforgettable bosses, and non-stop action. The pacing was nearly perfect. Every chapter introduced something new and exciting. Resident Evil 4 balanced horror and action better than almost any game before it. Even today, many developers point to Resident Evil 4 as one of the most influential games ever created. That's how powerful its legacy truly is. At number 2, we have Resident Evil 4 Remake. Released in 2023, the remake modernized every aspect of the original while preserving everything fans loved. Combat feels smoother, the atmosphere is darker, the horror elements are stronger, and the character development is significantly deeper. Leon, Ashley, Luis, and the rest of the cast received meaningful improvements that enhance the story without changing its core identity. Few remakes manage to honor the original while simultaneously surpassing it. Resident Evil 4 Remake accomplished exactly that, earning its place near the very top of the ranking. And finally, at number 1, Resident Evil 2 Remake. Released in 2019, this game achieved something truly extraordinary. It perfectly blended modern technology with classic survival horror. Every corner of the Raccoon Police Department felt terrifying. Every bullet mattered. Every encounter felt dangerous. The game transformed beloved characters like Leon and Claire while remaining faithful to the spirit of the original. Then there's Mr. X, a relentless force that constantly stalks players and creates some of the most intense moments in gaming. The visuals, atmosphere, sound design, storytelling, and gameplay all come together to create a near-perfect Resident Evil experience. Resident Evil 2 Remake isn't just the best Resident Evil game. It's one of the greatest survival horror games ever made. And that is why Resident Evil 2 Remake takes the number 1 spot on this list.